My wife cheated and left me, then claimed it was all for fun, so I divorced her. But she came back and begged me for assistance, so I did this. I and my wife have been married for 12 years. We believe ourselves to have married relatively young. Or at least she was quite young, but it felt right for both of us at the moment. We dated for about a year and a few months, and that was plenty for us. We knew we were meant to be, but given recent developments, I'm not sure we really were. I have a good career, and my brothers and I run a jewelry business together. We started from scratch and have grown it to be quite prosperous, which is always something to be proud of. I understand that doing business with family might be difficult, but for us, it's been a dream. We've never been the type of siblings that constantly disagree, so your mileage may vary. On the other hand, my wife built a cute cafe where people could get pastries, sip coffee, and read books. She's always been a bookworm, and is one of those persons that proudly declares that reading is part of their nature. Prior to meeting her, those folks irritated me to no end. But yes, I am a hypocrite. Bite me. To be honest, I was enthralled with the notion because I was trying to help her, so I helped her pay the rent on the space she's using for the cafe. It's pricey because it's in a more upscale neighborhood, but the business is becoming successful, at least without the burden of rent, which made me happy. I believe you now have the necessary background. This is where the true story begins. I can't recall exactly when she approached me to inform me about this new man who had appeared at the cafe. I believe it was around March. She thought he was really gorgeous. I was a secure person, and I discovered that the two of us could objectively discuss someone's appearance without it becoming a big deal. However, there was something unusual about the way she continued talking about this guy. Supposedly, he appeared to be the type of masculine hero that she reads about in the smut that ladies enjoy reading. Yes, she enjoys these types of literature as well. Those book-talking women seem to be everywhere, and I'll never understand why, because it appears to be the cheesiest form of romanticism that gets them going. Anyway, she went on about this guy for a while before it ended, but I must say that the adjectives she used to describe him were remarkably identical to how she described the cold, Russian hitman who fell for a woman in their apartment building's laundry room. No, I did not make that up. That is from a book she is interested in. That was the end of the day, but she informed me that he returned the next day and they spoke for quite some time. According to her, he was originally from Serbia and worked as a car salesman before deciding to move to the United States in pursuit of a better life. It took him some time to regain his footing and find his bearings. He was hunting for work in local dealerships because that was what he was excellent at. I realized in about 10 minutes that he was tall, blonde, gorgeous, well-dressed, and spoke with an evident accent. Apparently he enjoyed reading works set in the Wild West and fantasy novels such as The Lord of the Rings. She always tells me a lot about her cafe's customers, so this wasn't unusual. But there was a lot of flowery language involved. She looked to be nearly fetishizing him. He was no longer novel to her, so she stopped talking about him in detail, but it was evident that he was still a regular at her cafe, and it made me feel a lot better knowing that he didn't seem to be worthy of long spills every evening any longer. I even stopped by her cafe one afternoon to bring her lunch and noticed a guy sitting in the corner who suited the identical description. I was certain it was him, and he was undeniably attractive. He was named Ivan, according to her. At this point, things began to get a little wild. She came home one night with a silly smile on her face, so I asked her what was going on. She stated that Ivan had walked her home, and they had chatted a lot about literature on the way back. She admitted that he invited her out on a date, but she told him she was married and couldn't do it. She claimed he was very sorry, touched my hand affectionately, said goodnight, and departed. I recall asking her why she was smiling so big, and she said it was like something out of a book. I won't lie. That section irritated me since it seemed like she was romanticizing every contact she had with Ivan. I didn't realize it because he was a customer of her cafe. There was no way they were going to stop interacting practically every day. I didn't want to appear insecure, and she could have informed him that she didn't have a man. So again, I thought there was no need to discuss things, despite the fact that I had certain feelings about them. It was only my sentiments that I had to overcome, right? It became clear to me that this was not the case when my wife returned home about a week later with a bouquet of flowers which she instantly placed in a vase. She said it was a gift from Ivan. Nothing extraordinary. He claimed to have purchased a large quantity of fur from a coworker. He now has a job. It was her birthday. And he just thought it'd be good to get me some. Because he constantly notices how hard I work. I felt my head heat up as she said that, because she was attempting to describe the situation as if she were a schoolgirl who didn't understand why someone liked her. I asked her straight up if she could tell Ivan really liked her. She said it was evident, especially after he asked her out, but she thought the flowers were a nice gesture. And that perplexed me since, as a guy, you probably don't get flowers for a girl who rejects you. Even if it was because she was married, it was a pleasant gesture. He was still attempting to get into her trousers, or perhaps he was trying to get into her pants while leaving out all the other lovey-dovey stuff. He was having an easy time making advances at the time. I knew he was not going to stop anytime soon. I was correct as. My wife returned home 2 days later than usual. I believe it was over 2 hours later, and she had not informed me that she would be late. It wasn't the first time she had come home late, so she made 2 calls that went unanswered before choosing to give it some time. But before I could phone a third time, she arrived at home, and there was a clear bubbly movement. "You won't believe the night I had." That was the first thing she said before going into a long speech about how she had shown Ivan where the museum was, and now they want to grab a slice of American pizza because he had never had it before, and had only seen it in movies. Then they walked and talked, ate pizza, and did other things I didn't care about, but I let her finish. And when she was done, I asked her if she was attracted to Ivan. She appeared astonished and upset, insisting that she wasn't, and that the only person she was drawn to in that way was me. That she was simply attempting to welcome someone who was visiting an unfamiliar nation and had no acquaintances or close relatives to show him around and answer his questions. I wasn't convinced by any of this. So I told her straight up that she needed to quit seeing Ivan. Yes, that sparked a major argument. Unsurprisingly, she discussed how uncomfortable she was, how nothing was fair, how she should stop feeling intimidated, and a lot more rubbish. I was furious. But I was able to hold my cool and prevent my rage from erupting. I held firm, however, and advised her that she should quit any extracurricular activities with Ivan. It was understandable that he come to her cafe because he was a customer. However, things were not expected to escalate beyond that stage. I urged her to think what she would do in my shoes if a Serbian girl came to buy a bracelet and then decided to take her for a walk around town. According to her, I'd understand. But I believe we all know that's a lie, don't you? Long story short, I slept on the couch. No one is surprised, but the good news is that I stopped hearing about Ivan and all his turmoil, which was wonderful for my mental health. Again, I knew she'd be interacting with him at her cafe, but there was only so much that could happen there, and it appeared like nothing was going on because she was returning home at the same time every night, which was fine with me. I grew concerned when I walked into my wife's cafe unexpectedly one afternoon and she was not there. Neither was Ivan, though I couldn't be certain he'd be there at the time, so it didn't matter much. However, the fact that she was not present was significant, because it was unusual. I considered staying around till she returned or asking one of her staff where she had gone, but I opted not to make a big issue out of it. When I was getting back into my car from across the street, I noticed her and Ivan walking up the street, arms intertwined. It took all of my effort not to jump across the street and beat the heck out of the guy and cuss her out, but I managed to stay in the car, watch them walk into the cafe, and drive away. That happened yesterday, and I was really struggling to process it. I wanted to confront her about it as soon as she got home, but I believe there is a lot of power in knowing something the other person is unaware of. It will make it easier for me to see through any additional lies that are told. For example, when she returned home, I asked her about her day, and she characterized it as rather ordinary, with no mention of traveling anywhere. I have no idea where Ivan is, which is why I'm here. Should I confront her directly, or should I try to learn more about the situation first? I'm leaning toward the latter since I'm beginning to suspect that there is something going on inside my nose, and confronting her may result in all of my chances of discovering the truth being lost. Let me know what you think. Update 1. Hello. This is the guy from the post about the wife, the cafe, and the Serbian man. Well, I'm back with a major update. Let's chat about it, because I discovered a lot. It took me a while to gather the guts. But I eventually concluded that I had to find out the truth, no matter what the cost. I've never been the type of person who smiles at the prospect of examining your partner's phone, but in this case I knew I had to set my moral reservations aside and do it. So I did it the first chance I had, while she was sleeping. Unsurprisingly, she had Ivan in her messaging app, and they had been communicating frequently. It was WhatsApp, so I could easily export the entire discussion to a text file. I emailed it to my phone from hers. Of course, I deleted all of the proof. I browsed through her portfolio and discovered a few photos of them smiling together in public, but nothing really incriminating. I also sent those to my phone. Again, evidence was erased. It took me approximately 5 minutes to finish everything, and then I returned her phone to its proper place. After that, I completed all of the reading on my phone, which was far less suspicious in case you awoke unexpectedly. And boy, did I witness things that left my head spinning. Here's a transcript of a portion of the conversation that you might find as disturbing as I did. It happened after they were discussing a book that my wife had recommended to him. Let us call my wife Clarice instead of her own name. The primary characters reminded me of us, Clarice. That's exactly what I thought. the large mysterious hunk and the artistic girl who was divided between him and her boyfriend. In the following message, there are a lot of spicy sex scenes. That part especially makes me think of us. I believe that sex is always good, but in your situation it's with your husband. That was followed by a ridiculous chuckle emoji. Clarice sent laugh emojis. Yes, and I believe that's what makes it even more interesting and enjoyable. It feels quite wrong. I've never cheated before, but I don't really regret it. It's incorrect. But that's what makes it so appealing. Yeah, and I don't want this to end. It drove me mad. It was 2 a.m. I left the house to go for a walk because I couldn't follow her at that time. I would have done something crazier. I was fairly certain of it. I feel like I roamed about town aimlessly for 5 hours, yet when I returned, it was just 3 a.m. She was still sleeping too. Do you know what it's like to discover you're being cheated on? Just to find out your wife is mocking you by loving doing everything behind your back. She was basically, which was what pushed me over the brink. It wasn't like cheating would be forgiven anyway. When I returned, she was still asleep. So I grabbed her phone, skipped to that point in her discussion with Ivan, and recorded on her phone. I needed to be extremely clear that there was no doctoring going on here. Clarice clearly felt like she was living out one of her silly books, but it was abhorrent that I had to play the victim in all of this. She has no idea I know this. The divorce is heating up. There is really no other way for this to happen. I also want to see her go down. I also need to watch Ivan go down. I'm not sure how I'm going to do this, but I need both of them to hurt, and I mean terribly. Update 2. It was done, and it was fantastic. This concludes the story of Serbian guy Ivan and his book-loving, devious, unfaithful wife Clarice. They had no concept how much more concerned they should have been about me during the entire process. Allow me to skip through the dull sections of the story. Clarice drove to work one day and I parked across the street in an Uber. I watched as the process server entered the cafe and handed her the divorce papers in a very public manner. That was very satisfying, and then we drove away. I went to work, had a nice day, and by the end there hadn't been a single message or missed call from Clarice, which pleased me. She was well aware that she had been duped, and begging would not help. At least that is how I perceived it. That night she returned, crying uncontrollably. It is not gushing out of her nose. She looked like a complete wreck. I felt a tinge of sadness seeing her like that, and I blamed it on the remnants of love that remained, but it did not last long. She continued asking what she had done wrong. Was this Ivan? I realized she had no idea how much I knew. She must have sought to figure out if she had leaks in her operation before she could figure out what I knew. I couldn't decide if it was better to tell her I knew about Ivan or not, so I made a vow. I told her I saw her and that we had been walking arm in arm that day, but I didn't say anything else. At that moment she became empowered and began pleading and calling me stupid. She said there was no cause to divorce her over that. It was wrong to continue seeing him. But there was nothing occurring between them, and I was feeling insecure. I was jealous. She didn't know whether to grovel or attack me. Finally, I told her to leave my residence, which she did. That is where the actual divorce occurs. That aspect was a lot of fun for me. I have a lot more money than she does, which means there's a lot more to lose in a divorce, but also a lot more to spend on top lawyers, which I made sure to do. When you get divorced, choose a decent lawyer. I promise you that it is worthwhile because not only did I have numerous photos of the two of them after I expressed my concerns, but I also had text messages that clearly demonstrated the adultery. Furthermore, my rockstar lawyer was able to identify transactions in her joint account that appeared to be spent on Ivan. He matched the dates on some transactions to those in the complete text message transcript, where he praised her for specific items. It quickly became evident that she was squandering our money on her Serbian lover boy. The lawyer also did an excellent job of presenting her as a gold digger, which I enjoyed watching. She gave it her all, but there was nothing that stood out to me. I'm not a perfect guy, but I don't have any divorce-worthy defects. By the time the divorce was over, I had all I needed. I kept my house and my car, and because of that notable infidelity, as well as the fact that I had set her up with a money-making company, I was not asked to pay alimony. Love you, Judge. She got to keep the car I bought for her. I didn't think I needed to stress over it. And it was simpler to accept what I got since she didn't leave the divorce completely empty-handed. Now this is my favorite part. It was difficult for me to get back at Ivan. It was quite hard. But one day he walked out of the diner. I followed him down the street and around the corner. I got his attention, introduced myself, and slugged him right in the jaw. It stung like hell, but I busted his lip and slammed him to the ground with it, and he looked stunned. I wasn't seeking for a street fight, but I would have accepted one if it occurred. I believe he understood he had no moral high ground in this situation because he rose up and departed. It felt nice. I wish I could have done more because he knew he was fooling with a married woman, but it was plenty for me, and probably the best I could have obtained without a criminal conviction. Then Clarice. You remember the rent I was paying for her? It was due again, and because she had her cafe in such a lovely area of town, it was costly. It was generally due on May 1st, but it wasn't until the end of May that she called me, crying, saying she needed to pay the cafe's rent but didn't have the money. She begged and begged, but I advised her to sell the car to get the money before hanging up the phone. She called numerous times that week, but I did not answer the phone. Spoiler. When she called and began cursing me out, I discovered she had sold the automobile. She claimed it was evil that I couldn't help her even at the lowest level. I told her it was horrible to believe cheating on me would be nice and thrilling. She couldn't respond to that. I'm waiting until May of next year to see how she deals with rent. If the gods have their way, she will also lose the cafe, especially since she no longer has access to my bookkeeper. It's been nice. To be honest, I am newly single, wealthy, and content. I'm not going to pretend that the divorce, betrayal, and infidelity weren't painful, because they were. But you can only go forward, right? That is what I am going to do. Thank you for sticking around and offering words of support and guidance. I greatly appreciate it. Hopefully I'll never have to write another post. See you.